today to discuss the subject is Mr. Yang Xiyu, Senior Research Fellow at the China Institute of International Studies, and Dr. Larry Hajime Shina'gawa, Senior Director of New Asian Leaders, an NGO promoting political identity for Asian Americans. Welcome to the show, gentlemen. First, Mr. Yang, let me come to you. Could you please tell us what do you think of this bill and the significance that a Canadian Member of Parliament for the province of Ontario wants to make this an official day of remembrance for that province? What was your first reaction upon hearing such news?
Well, I think it's at the right time to do a right thing because such an act will have a good lasting education to generation to let the people from avoiding repeating the historical tragedy. That's not only good for Chinese, but also for all Asian people and all peoples in the community.
Now, Dr. Shina'gawa, let me come to you now as an Asian American. What is your first reaction upon hearing such news? I know there are some Japanese media outlets, for instance, the Senkai Shimbun, which has put out some reports saying with this move that the Chinese has started to derogate Japan outside of China. What is your reaction to such news?
Well, my reaction to the news is that this bill, Bill 79, is one that should be supported by the larger community. Asian Americans will certainly learn, Asian Canadians will also learn about the tragic history that did happen, the Holocaust that did occur, where most likely about 200,000 victims were killed by the Japanese soldiers. And this is very important. It is a moment of learning and reflection that can be done, and it is something that should be done alongside a remembrance of what happened in terms of Chinese in Canada because of exclusion acts that occurred, and what happened to Japanese in Canada because there was the internment of them against their will during World War II. So all of these kinds of learning moments are extremely important. And we really definitely need to find out more about why these tragedies occurs and to try to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
So basically you're saying, Dr. Shina'gawa, let me come back to you. You're saying that not just Memorial Day against the Nanjing Massacre should be enacted, there should be other day to memorize what Japanese were suffering in Canada. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
I'm also saying that there was exclusion acts that were passed against Chinese in Canada as well. All of these things did happen, and they were all extremely important and affected Asian Canadians. And I can't emphasize that this is so important. Memory is very important to the history and the future of Asian Canadians and Asian Americans. And I feel very strongly that the Nanjing Massacre should never be minimalized. It is something that is a human tragedy. It is a universal problem that did happen in which people went berserk and committed atrocious acts that should never be done again.
Well,
we need to learn from these kinds of experiences.
We definitely need to learn from history. But one thing, what the Chinese people don't seem to understand is that whenever China talks about what Chinese people or people in other parts of Asia suffered under Japanese invasion during Second World War, Japan seems to make itself a bigger victim of what they suffered. And it's like, yes, you suffered from this, but we also had a lot of suffering. Mr. Yang, I wonder, what is your reaction to what Dr. Shina'gawa was saying just now?
Well, on one hand, I agree with our Japanese friends' opinion that both Japanese people and the Chinese people and the Asian people who suffered from the war are victims of the war. The war was made by Japanese invader policymakers that bring tragedies to all of the peoples in the Japanese people. But on the other hand, we need to have a correct acknowledgement about history. Who made the war? Who suffered from the war? Based on the shared acknowledgement of the history, then all the different peoples can have a shared great future. So that is the key reason why Chinese, Koreans, even nowadays, stress special point to the right acknowledgement about history.
Dr. Shina'gawa, what is your reaction to what Mr. Yang was just saying?
I agree that the Chinese people should be very, very forceful in trying to make sure that they make the public aware of what did happen during World War II. In fact, it's not only the Chinese people, the world should know. And this is something that cannot be repeated, and I cannot stress enough that the Japanese should acknowledge that this kind of massacre and Holocaust did occur. There are elements, far right-wing elements on both sides, the Japanese and the Chinese side, who would like to politicize this. But this is not a political issue. This is more an issue of human rights violated because of war and because of aggression. And these kinds of things should never be done again. And that message should be done in such a way that it's universal and it supports human rights.
Mr. Yang, your final wrap-up remark, please.
Well, human rights problems is the result of the war, and decision on the war is the root. So what we hope and we want is that, just as our Japanese friend mentioned, we need to prevent such a tragedy history from repeating again. And I like to introduce former British Prime Minister Churchill's famous saying, those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. So now that we have a common knowledge, say the history is a tragedy, we need to have a correct lesson from history to repeat, to prevent the history from repeating.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. I'm afraid we have to leave it there. This is a lengthy topic. I'm sure we can do more debate in the future. I appreciated you joining us, Mr. Yang Xiyu from the China Institute of International Studies and Dr. Larry Hajime Shina'gawa from the New Asian Leaders. Now, Ontario is home to a large Chinese community, and some even have direct relationships with victims and survivors of the Nanjing Massacre. Despite opposition from the local Japanese community, the Provincial Member of Parliament, Soo Wong, remains hopeful and says that many across Ontario are behind the bill. Actually, about 100,000 people have given their signature behind this bill. Now the bill has passed its second reading, and it is still needing to pass a third reading before coming into force. We'll keep you posted on that.